Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Oh, Bonnie's looking for the Zoom link.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
All right. It being 6:02, and welcome everybody. It's good to see you, Lucia.
Nice to see you too.
And we do have a quorum. I know we are expecting Bonnie to join us as well, but I will get this meeting started. So it being 6:02, Wednesday, September 16th, 2020, I call to order this meeting of the Brockton Conservation Commission. And I would like to remind everyone that the Commonwealth and the City of Brockton are currently in a state of emergency. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, and that this meeting is being held, this public meeting is being held over Zoom. And the public has been invited to attend. If you have any questions, you should raise your hand, and at the appropriate point in the meeting, you will be acknowledged. And if you have any questions, you can also post them to the department. Did I cover everything, Pam?
You did.
All right. The first item on the agenda is a request for a certificate of compliance for 1854 Main Street.
Okay, and we received a request via email from J.K. Holmgren Engineering to withdraw that COC request due to the need to address the unfinished stormwater basins.
We need to move Bonnie.
Got it.
Okay, now she's in the right spot.
Scott, I see you're on. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, we submitted this way back in like February or March looking for a partial, obviously with the shutdown, it got pushed to, I don't remember, maybe sometime in August. Megan went out there and looked at it, had some concerns. We spoke to the owner of the property. We spoke to his contractor. He was supposed to get it done, basically. Everything is done except really for the stabilization of the property, loaming and seeding, things like that. There was a bunch of things that Megan had questions on. I forwarded those to the owner and the contractor, like I said, and they haven't done anything with it. So I figured at this point, Madam Chair, instead of constantly continuing it, I'll just withdraw it. And when they get around to doing the work or needing it, I'll just resubmit at that point.
Sounds good, and I'm sure the board will join me in saying we appreciate that. Do I have do we need to make a motion, Pam, to have it withdrawn?
I
I don't think so. I think it's withdrawn, so.
It's just withdrawn.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is a request for certificate of compliance for 738 North Carey Street. Scott, you're here for that.
Yes, I am. I don't know if well, it's, Madam Chair, it's the lot directly next to Lot 3, next to Lot 1 North Carey that we spoke about at our last meeting, looking for a partial certificate of compliance. We're looking for the same on this lot number 3. Your agent has gone out a couple of times and met with the applicant, Jim Morrissey, Brad Holmes, on both properties, kind of trying to straighten things out and figure out where we need to go moving forward. I think everything, just about everything on the plan is according to plan. There are a couple of changes. We've added dry wells, again, similar to the other lot. We added dry wells for the roof runoff, which was required by the planning board, but for whatever reason didn't get carried on to the conservation plans. So that's one change to the plans that you may notice. I did submit a letter similar to what was requested previously about us witnessing the excavation and the installation of those drainage systems. So I think we've taken care of that. I'm sure Megan has a lot to say. I just wanted to just jump ahead of her a little bit. One of the things that we kind of realized this week on Monday was the silt sock was proposed and has been installed quite up gradient from the 25-foot buffer zone. As you recall, Mr. Morrissey did some clearing of a shrub layer and some removal of dead trees that kind of hung us up on the other one. But as I said, looking at it now, there's a big area on lot 3 in particular that's outside of the 25-foot buffer zone where he did some clearing. So I'm not sure exactly how that, how that affects what the commission's opinion is of it. It's still work that was beyond the approved limit of work, but I guess our bigger point is if I had done what we typically do, which is put the limit of work right up against the 25-foot buffer zone and hope you guys approve it, and then we clear cut everything, Mr. Morrissey at that point probably he obviously would have clear cut it, and there'd be about 15 or 18 additional trees that would no longer be there. So I'm just, not sure exactly how much that matters towards what Megan saw out there, but we're probably better off having Megan talk as opposed to me rambling on, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Megan?
Sure. So just to run through my observations. So I have been out to lot 3 twice in the past week. Generally, the site is built according to the approved plan compared to the as-built plan. Again, the rear deck is slightly longer, but again, it doesn't project any further from what was approved. I did note that the driveway swale that is located outside of the 100-foot buffer zone is not shown on the as-built plan. It was shown on the approved plan, and when I was out there in the field, the swale is there and it appears to be graded properly, so it may have been left off the as-built, but it does appear to be there as was proposed. Again, as Scott mentioned, the same issue with the infiltration chambers not being included on the original NOI submittal. So we did receive the written statement from their office saying that they witnessed the infiltration system installation in May, that they documented the groundwater was established at 17.7 feet, and that the bottom of the infiltration system was installed at 219.2 feet, so about 2 feet above the groundwater. Again, I noted that the limit of work markers are installed and the disturbed soils have started to be stabilized with the vegetative cover for the back lawn. As has already been brought up, there has been clearing past the limit of work. Again, mostly removal of the shrub layer plus a few trees. Based on the staking of the 25-foot buffer zone, it does appear that the majority of the clearing occurred between the limit of work and the 25-foot buffer zone, but there was some clearing of the 25-foot buffer zone at the northeast and northwestern corners of the site. It does extend into the 25-foot. So Brad Holmes at ECR has prepared a buffer zone restoration plan for the area that includes interplanting the native woody shrubs in the 25-foot buffer zone. It includes seeding the entire area with the buffer zone restoration mix, spring and fall reviews to then monitor the site for 3 years to maintain native seedling growth, and then management and removal techniques for the non-native shrub growth, which in this case would be the glossy buckthorn for the most part, and then submitting monitoring reports to the commission at the end of each growing season by December 15th of each year. And in addition to that, the applicant has included some additional supplementary information. For example, a copy of his warranty agreement with the homeowners or the prospective buyers that now includes language related to the buffer zone restoration area, and including language that the homeowners are not to do any cutting. And then also the suggestion that the applicant's performance bonds that's being held with the planning department be held in contingent on the 3-year monitoring plan and the issuance of the certificate of compliance. So based on all of that, I would say there is, a substantial body of documentation that's been provided to address the unpermitted clearing. So at this time, I think that that documentation can be taken into account when considering issuing a certificate of compliance. I would recommend that the woody plantings be put into the 25-foot buffer zone to address and start the restoration of those altered portions of the 25-foot buffer zone. And then I think the partial certificate of compliance could be granted then, making the buffer zone restoration plan incorporated in as continuing conditions. So everything from that plan in terms of the mitigation strategies, the update reports, the biannual visits could all be made into continuing conditions after the initial plantings.
Okay, I just have a couple of comments. So you mentioned that a swale that was part of the approved plan appears to have been constructed, and it appears to be properly graded, but it's not part of the as-built plan. I would like to see that as-built plan, because that is a plan of record updated to show the swale. The note about the $6,750 performance bond be held by the planning department. Is that a proposed performance bond, or is
No,
that
we're holding that money now.
Right.
as part of the subdivision development, like the road construction?
No, as well as part of some of the utility and some of the work that needed to be completed.
The work in primarily the utility connections in North Carey Street.
Right.
You can have that bonded. That work is all.
Right.
So we're
Right,
holding
which is
that cash. It
It's
was
cash?
cash, ma'am. It was cash.
Okay, so a couple of things. I mean, it's cash. It was held for a specific, by the planning board, for completion of utility work within the right-of-way or easements.
Within the right of way.
Within the right of way. And
The city
patching.
doesn't have the ability, even cash, which is, again, a much easier to put your hands on if you have to go in and finish that utility work or road work. However, that's on work that, the town, the city, in order to do that work, would have to take the ownership of the roadways. We can't go in and do work on someone else's property. So, as I was trying to say at the last meeting, the best tool the Conservation Commission has is when a certificate of compliance is not issued, at the closing, the sellers will agree to hold back, have money held back in escrow that would cover the cost to complete the work that needs to be done in order to receive a full certificate of compliance or a certificate of compliance. And that puts the onus where it belongs, back on the developer whatever, he can make whatever arrangements he wants to with the property owner. But it takes the onus off the commission, the city, to try to bring someone to task with a tool that we really can't do anything with. So that's my comment on the performance bond. Commissioners, Joanne,
I have no questions.
Bonnie?
So I do have a question, and this is going to be about what we know about Mr. Morrissey. I'm not sure if he's here, but why are we continuing to have this cutting happening prior to commission and further than is supposed to be happening? How can we address this? Can we make it stop? Like, what is going on?
It's one job. It's the same job. It's not a continual situation that's happening all over the city with Mr. Morrissey. It's one job. These houses are next door to each other, 40 feet away from each other. It's essentially one project. We filed separate notices of intent for lot 1 and lot 3, but it's one job. This isn't a situation that's ongoing with Mr. Morrissey. He's been building for 30 years. I don't think you folks have ever had an issue with anything he's done in the city of Brockton. So it's not an ongoing situation. He went in there and did some clearing of dead trees in the shrub layer without realizing it was going to be an issue. Now he knows it's an issue. It'll never happen again. And I think he's certainly trying to address it as best he can in a hurry. Hiring Brad Holmes, having Brad do everything, meeting with Megan. I think we're well on the way to straightening it out, but it's.
Okay, so this isn't a separate issue from the last month because it was the same thing at a different site, but this had already been done for.
It's the same site. It's
Well,
lot,
the same,
lot 3. It's the same
Same
property.
project.
He's building 2 houses at the same time, so it's the exact same project. It isn't
Yeah, okay.
a different job.
okay, Lucia, do you have any questions, comments?
No, I don't have anything at the moment.
May I make a comment?
Yes,
I wanted to emphasize, I understand your,
and I'm sorry, Mr. Morrissey, even though we can see your name, could you just state your name for the record?
James Morrissey.
Thank you.
The performance bond, my suggestion was that I extend the period. I could theoretically apply for its return in the next month or so. I would have to provide satisfaction to planning that the work in the road is approved by the DPW, and then it follows a process in which the money would then be refunded to me in approximately 60 to 90 days. I opted to suggest that it run concurrent with the order of conditions, so I'm not going to make a request for the return of that money so that I can fulfill the goal and purpose of obtaining a full, complete COC within the 3-year time frame or sooner, depending on our annual reviews. I plan on undertaking the proposal made by Brad Holmes immediately. And one other thing about the warranty that needs to be clarified, I'm obliged by law, mass law, to provide a 1-year warranty. I've extended to each homeowner to enjoin their cooperation for the purpose of the monitoring period to a 3-year warranty. So I had better build a very good house because I'm going to be living with those houses for up to 3 years while I work with the homeowners to make sure that the passive regeneration combined with the active planting and seeding, and hopefully 2 good growing seasons occur that we're able to fulfill our obligation. So I voluntarily extended a warranty after a little bit of soul searching to show my good faith in trying to obtain the objective we all want to see obtained.
Okay, so I appreciate that explanation. So what you're saying is you're acknowledging that you understand the performance bond is an obligation you hold with the planning board, and rather than seeking repayment or closure of the bond upon completion of the utility work and the roadway work, you have agreed, and we would get some kind of agreement in writing.
Absolutely.
document that stated what each party's responsibilities were and rights were, you would extend the period for which that bond would be active. And you would not be able, and it's it's cash, Pam?
Yeah,
It's been
So that
deposited.
cash, yeah, that cash would not be paid back to you until
until I get a
such time
COC.
as the Conservation Commission issued a certificate of compliance.
Correct. And one other, and you, I think in my memo, I believe I sent it to Megan, I made it clear, and I will sign any document that acknowledges that it would run concurrent with the monitoring period. You had mentioned an escrow. I think the extension of a 3-year warranty is of greater value to a homeowner. And it's the only way I could conceive of enjoining their cooperation that no further action is taken in that area so that the passive and active plans can succeed.
So I was going to comment on that as well, because the 3-year warranty is the same warranty. The language isn't different. Or what's different about the language of the 3-year warranty than your normal 1-year warranty?
The normal 1-year warranty is obliged by the state. So what I've done is extended what would be a 1-year warranty to 3 years, but I added one specific paragraph and I furnished a copy of that warranty executed by both prospective buyers and myself that includes language specific to who's responsible to do what regarding the monitoring period. I incur all the financial cost. I'm allowed access to the property, and the buyers, if they violate those terms, they void essentially year 2 and year 3. So their incentive is a 3-year warranty. And
Yes.
I don't plan on going anywhere if the good Lord is willing. I'm still active in business. And I enjoy a good relationship with each homeowner. After the last meeting, I met with both of them immediately the weekend that followed, and I laid it out to them. This is what I have to do. And if they wanted to withdraw from the sale, that was fine. But it was at that time I made the good faith gesture to them of extending the 3-year warranty. And I can tell you, they were very excited. And I thought that that would work better than putting aside in escrow that had an individual purpose, because I really need their cooperation as much as my active involvement to get this to an end. So I'd like to get my performance bond back, but I voluntarily have agreed to run it concurrent with the monitoring period until we get 2 COCs. And I've extended a 3-year warranty, which is either a bad business proposal, but I feel comfortable with it because I know the home, I know the people, and I know what I have to do.
So let me make it really clear for the commissioners. What Mr. Morrissey is proposing is that by extending the warranty, he's responsible for everything that would have been covered under the 1-year warranty for an additional 2 years. And again, I can understand why the homeowners would be somewhat excited about that, because usually you just have that 1-year warranty. So if anything goes wrong with the items that are identified in the warranty, they would be covered for an additional 2 years.
And one last point, Madam Chair, and this, I listened to everything you said at the last meeting. Your concern was a developer that walks away, makes promises and goes. I'm stuck with the problem because I want to see it resolved. That's why I'm willing to have my performance bond and extend the warranty. Secondly, you made the comment, and it was correct, that, okay, the developer fulfills their thing, but now you run into a problem with my successor in interest. I think the warranty with language that is tied to the monitoring period and responsibility, the financial responsibility is mine, ties me and my successors in interest to this purpose and goal.
I have to say, Mr. Morrissey, that I'm impressed now understanding what you're really proposing, because those are the kind of what's the word I want to use? Incentives that an escrow provides. So I do think that what is being proposed would suffice. So at the last meeting, did we not vote to deny issuing the certificate of
did.
the partial?
You did.
Are you asking that we just issue a partial for this lot or for both lots?
I would really like a partial for both. If I have to formally apply for a partial for 728 Lot 1, I will do so. I've made the prospective buyer of that aware of that possibility. Ultimately, my goal would be to get a partial. It's a piece of paper, but as Megan has indicated, the partial would be conditioned on the language that she put in her memo. And I'm glad that she was available. She came on short notice today so that we could have a follow-up in anticipation of this meeting. And everything that we discussed, she incorporated in her letter. It speaks to our thoughts and our intentions.
Any thoughts from the other commissioners? And I'll just open it up.
Joanne here. I have to say I'm really impressed at the steps Mr. Morrissey has taken to address the issues. And my feeling is that I would feel confident issuing a partial, given everything that's been explained. However, not in particular for this case, but going forward, I'd like to discuss partials in general, and what our position as a commission on that is, because I feel like in some instances in the past, we've sort of said, well, it's a partial doesn't give us any control. And so we don't issue a partial at all. So I don't know, I'm just a little bit, for precedent, I'd like to have a discussion in the future, but for this case in particular, I would feel confident issuing a partial.
Thank you. Bonnie or Lucia?
This is Bonnie Sparks. I am going to echo what Joanne said, and I am very appreciative of all of the steps that have been taken in order to comply and make this as, what I'll say, most excellent as possible. So thank you for all of the work that you've been putting in, essentially behind the scenes, in between the times that we speak with you. But I agree with Joanne on the way our hands are tied with a partial, not necessarily in this instance, because it really does seem like it's been very well thought about and covered, but definitely moving forward, something that we can kind of dig our own fingers into.
Thank you. And again, I want to make a comment. I think maybe what we need to do, this was one other comment I was going to make. I mentioned we would need an agreement as to how the performance bond could be released, and I would like something drafted that the commission could see, and I would like the city solicitor's office to take a look at that and make sure we have the power to do that, Pam and Megan. So I think maybe we would continue to the next meeting, but with the understanding that it, the steps that you've proposed should be able to get us to issuing that partial certificate of compliance.
Might I ask, and I don't want to be, I don't want to look a gift. Might I request two partials, one for the previous lot, because the same arrangement has been made and I furnished all the paperwork with lot 1 with lot 3. If we're going to continue, I'm hoping that we can continue with the purpose of getting the document you want, which I will execute, and hopefully at a continued meeting get two partials. Is that possible to consider?
Megan, what do you think? And then I'm going to ask the commissioners for their.
I mean, in terms of housekeeping, I would recommend that if lot 3 is being continued to the next meeting, I would recommend that the request form be submitted for lot 1 again, as Jim has said, he has already submitted a lot of the supplementary information for Lot 1. So I think just for good housekeeping, they could submit the actual, I think it's Form 8A or whichever one it is. Just resubmit it for, again, the housekeeping, but
We can do that.
yeah.
Yes.
Commissioners?
Joanne here. As far as I'm concerned, it's pretty much the same thing for both of them. So yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay, anyone disagree? Okay, so you, Mr. Morrissey, you said you
Yes.
would draft what that agreement looks like and submit it to Megan, who will review it with the city solicitor?
I will definitely do that. I'll have my attorney draw something. I'm not the smartest guy, so I'll have it kept simple, but very clear as to its intention, which is to run concurrent with the monitoring period for the purpose of obtaining a COC, whether it's within 3 years or sooner. And I'm optimistic on the sooner, but I'm going to work to that end.
Okay. All right, and Megan, if you want, we can talk tomorrow or Friday about, I mean, I'm guessing you probably know what should be in there from our perspective. And also our obligation. I mean, if we're entering this together, the commission would have an obligation to make sure that as monitoring is provided, we're reviewing it. And if there's any concerns with the successful mitigation and regrowth, that's communicated in a timely manner and things like that. Okay, do I have a motion to continue to the next meeting?
I'd like to make a motion to continue this to the next meeting.
Do I have a second?
Joanne, I'll second.
All in favor? Say your name and
Sparks,
You're-
aye.
Zygmunt, aye.
Cersei, aye.
Danielson, aye. We'll see you next month.
Morrissey, aye. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. And let's see, we are on Lot A, Wilbur Street. Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Scott Farrier from Holmgren Engineering. Have a notice of intent for Michael Heichel on Wilbur Street. Wilbur Street's a little dead-end road off of Huntress Ave, which is off of Thatcher Street. We received zoning board of appeals approval and planning board approval to divide the property as shown in the plan. There is a BVW to the very rear of the property that was flagged by Brad Holmes. We've shown the 25, 50, and 100-foot buffer zones from there, have the house placed as close to the street as we can get it, and as close to the, I guess, the left-hand line as you look at it from Wilbur Ave as we could to still make everything work with the existing utilities that are out there. So I think we've pretty much done the best we could with the lot and the wetlands. We're honoring that 25-foot no-touch zone. We have the silt sock on the upland side of the 25-foot. And I think everything else that your agent mentioned in her report, we're fine with, and I think we can agree to all of those issues.
Okay, have we received confirmation of a butter notification?
I
Yes.
emailed those yesterday.
Okay. Megan, do you want to give the,
Yes, so
Run
I
down
can
on your
just
report.
confirm that. So yes, basically there is a BVW. It begins at the edge of the existing lawn area. So this parcel was subdivided off the one with the existing house that's existed well before the 70s, along with the lawn. And so the BVW starts just past the lawn, and they are proposing putting the limit of work and erosion control at the 25-foot to the BVW as it is. And so my only comment or concern was just the limited clearance. So about less than 10 feet is provided between the limit of work and the southwest corner of the house. And there is grading proposed up to the limit of work around that corner. So it does present the risk of encroachment during earth moving activities. Given the current flat topography of the site, there isn't a lot of fill or grading proposed. So based on that, I think the risk of encroachment could be sufficiently minimized by including the special conditions in my report. So basically that if we have the standard silt sock erosion control and supplement that with silt fence to give an extra height of protection. Again, a condition prohibiting any stockpile of fill or backfill, particularly within the 50-foot buffer zone, would mitigate some of that risk. And as it has been done previously, including special conditions related to requiring an environmental monitor who is specifically responsible for maintaining the integrity of the erosion control barrier during earth moving activities. So in particular, the foundation installation, excavation, and the up to final grading activities. So I think those things taken together would be sufficient to mitigate the concern of that limited clearance in the corner. So at this point, I think there's sufficient information to issue the order of conditions. I would recommend that an order of conditions would be issued with the standard special conditions and then the ones I've outlined in my report to help mitigate the clearance issue I mentioned. And then along with this, the standard continuing conditions, so no herbicides or pesticides on the site and the permanent limit of work markers.
Mr. Faria, would your client have a problem with any of those?
No, ma'am.
I do have, this is more a curiosity question because I'm looking at this and it's not immediately jumping out at me. What was the variance sought?
It was previously one lot. So lot
Right.
A and B were combined. So it was a variance to allow for the creation of the creation of the two lots, lot A and B, but lot A.
Are they both they're non-conforming lots? They're undersized?
Lot A is, lot B is not. Lot A,
Okay.
the property was previously two lots, but they ran, I guess you'd say perpendicular to Huntress Ave as opposed to off of Wilbur. So you wouldn't have been able to build on the lot off of Huntress Ave with the electric easement and the wetlands that go through there. So that was the reasoning for the granting of the variance.
Okay. So would they have been conforming lots if they could have been built on with frontage on Huntress?
They would have been grandfathered lots. You know, they were created years ago. They did not have, they each had about 75 feet of frontage on Huntress. So I guess there's.
Yeah, but even, I mean, because they were contiguous lots. well,
That's
then-
what I mean. There's some
Yeah.
argument. Brockton's a
Yeah.
little different than everybody else. Most cities and towns, because they're contiguous, you have to combine the lots to try to
Right.
get as close to zoning as you can. Brockton has a little bit different feeling
Right.
on lots that are lots of record and shown as separate lots and things like
Yeah.
that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Commissioners, any comments, questions?
Comments or questions?
Hearing none, I'm guessing you want to, let's see. We have Mr. Heichel here. Does Michael want to say anything? Do we need any? I don't think we need to hear anything more, but
Oh, thank you for taking the opportunity to review my request on the Conservation Commission. And whatever you decide, we'll go forward with it. Not a problem.
okay, and it looks like we don't have any members of the public for this hearing. All right. Do I have a motion to close?
Joanne here, I'll make a motion to close.
Second,
Sparks here, I second.
all in favor?
Darcy, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Zygmunt, aye.
Danielson, aye. Do I have a motion to issue an order of conditions that includes the special conditions outlined in our agent's report?
Joanne here, I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions with the standard conditions as well as the special conditions outlined in the agent's report.
Bonnie
Go ahead.
Sparks here, I second.
All in favor?
Percy, I.
Sparks, aye.
Zygmunt, aye.
Danielson, aye. Motion passes.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
All right. And Scott, you're done for the night now?
No, I have the next one, ma'am.
One more.
Oh, wait a minute. What, I looked too far down. Okay.
North
490
Carey.
Wait a minute. Yeah, that's right. 496 North Carey. The Careys are getting me all
Confused.
Quincy and everything else. Okay.
All right, Scott Farrier again from Holmgren Engineering. This time representing Charlie Macy of CLM Development. And Mr. Macy has property on North Carey Street. It's currently the location for an existing house, 496 North Carey Street, that has, in the last few years, I guess, fallen in to disrepair. There's a couple of buildings on the property, a shed, garage, the actual dwelling itself. The lot is extremely overgrown, an awful lot of Japanese knotweed on the site. So Mr. Macy is looking to tear down that house, build a new house here on Lot B. There is a BVW that is actually off of our property that you folks have looked at previously on Bellevue and the Bellevue Ave extension. Brad Holmes was out there recently, flagged that wetlands, and that wetland does put our proposed work within the buffer zone. In this case, we've kept everything, again, as far as we reasonably could. We've, instead of holding the 25-foot buffer zone, we've pushed everything to 50 feet away, just to have a little bit extra room. So we do have our proposed limit of work at its closest point on the 50-foot buffer zone. We have a dwelling proposed with an attached garage, driveway coming in off of North Carey Street with municipal water and sewer. As I said, the site has a lot of cleanup work to do. Your agent has a report with a few conditions. I don't think we have any concerns with those conditions at all. One of them was getting monitor reports and some additional help on the Japanese knotweed that's out there. So I think similar to what we did on Jim Morrissey's project on North Carey Street with Brad Holmes, he'll come up with a plan for us. We haven't submitted that yet, but Brad will be working on it, and hopefully I can get that to you guys in the next week or so to handle that situation.
Okay, Megan?
Yes, so I can confirm having been on the site. So yes, in this case, basically the BVW is.
Oh, did I ask if we received a butter note? I'm sorry. I'm
yes.
supposed to do that.
Yes, and we have.
Okay, I'm sorry, continue.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yes, so the BVW basically is an extension off of a larger system that's in the abutting Rocky Mountain Spring parcel. So it basically runs along the boundary to this parcel, which is why the parcel itself falls within the 100-foot buffer zone. And it's basically defined by an obvious change in topography. And then within that BVW is a certified vernal pool whose boundaries fall within the BVW boundary. So the buffer zone, we're going based off the BVW. So yes, as Scott has suggested, so I basically have two concerns with this project. Again, with the Japanese knotweed, it is pretty substantial, particularly throughout this parcel and the eastern part of this parcel. Just by looking at it, my suggestion is that we're looking at a removal and disposal plan in particular. I'm not sure if total eradication is going to be possible because it does extend into the BVW and onto the surrounding parcels. But at the very least, we do need to consider how it's going to be removed and disposed of knowing that a substantial amount's going to have to be cleared just to do the project as proposed. So some sort of plan to ensure that we aren't spreading it further onto the abutting parcels, particularly as you move west onto the Rocky Mountain Spring parcel. There is less knotweed out in that direction. So obviously we don't want to be spreading it in that direction. And again, we also don't want to be taking it off site without a plan for where it's going to go. And then my second concern has to do with the topography and grading of the site. So the plan that was submitted doesn't have any elevation or grading information, either existing or proposed. And I do think, again, even though we're looking at a limit of work at the 50-foot buffer zone, which, you know, provides a good buffer, we still need to know what's going on within that limit of work. And particularly with this site, my concern is that when you come in off the existing driveway to where the existing structures are to be raised, they're currently sitting on raised concrete or elevated concrete and stone foundations. Particularly the house, if you look off the back of the house, you're looking at about a 5 to 6 foot drop. So it's not currently a flat site. So I presume substantial excavation and grading could be needed, both to remove the existing structures and then put the house where it's being proposed. So I think at this point we can't really issue any special conditions until we have a better sense of what needs to be done in terms of the topography.
And that's, as I said, that's fine with us, Madam Chair. We'll get you that additional topographic information and a report from Brad Holmes about the knotweed and his plans to take care of that situation.
Okay, so any questions from the commissioners? I just have another planning question. It looks like, what's this, the frontage for this is 50 feet. Was a variance needed to create this lot as well?
Yes. It comprises.
Now you have two non-conforming lots, right?
Exactly. So we did receive a variance from the ZBA to divide it as shown with the 2 separate pieces of frontage. This lot has 50 feet. The other lot has right about 40 feet, I believe it is. So.
Yeah. Megan, I understand that the vernal pool is off property, but did you get a chance to observe what the condition of that pool was?
You know, I got about as close as I could, given, again, the knotweed is severe. And,
Yeah.
you know, I was able to get, in terms of, you know, by looking at where the flagging was, I was able to get within the vicinity of it. But it's hard for me to give too much detail because
I'm wondering if the knotweed and the invasives have invaded the pool.
Yes, I wasn't able to determine that. It would require, you know, a more concerted effort to go into the knotweed and see, you know, if you went all the way through onto the Bellevue Ave property.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, I think Brad would be happy that I volunteer this for him, but I think when he's out there looking at the site again to do his remediation report, I can ask him to trek out into that vernal pool and just mention.
Maybe take some photos. That would, that would be great.
I know he really enjoyed this site, so I'm sure he'll be happy that I'm asking him to do that.
Are you being sarcastic?
Very. It's very thick and a lot of briars.
Yep. Well, it's fall. When did he do the flagging? You said last spring?
Yeah, no, it was like in July.
Okay, so
Thick and humid.
the vegetation will be a little less dense right now.
Sure.
All right, so you want to continue to the next meeting?
I would ask for continuance, please.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to continue to the next meeting.
Second?
Sparks, I second.
All in favor?
Darcy,
Sparks,
aye.
aye.
Okay, we have 2. Joanne?
Aye.
Danielson, aye. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, folks. Have a good night.
You too. Okay, the next items on the agenda are continuances. We have, let's see, the notice of intent for Belgravia Avenue. They have requested a continuance to November. Do I have a motion to continue to November?
Joanne here, I'll make a motion to continue to November.
Sparks here,
Second.
second.
All in favor?
Cersei, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Zygmunt, aye.
Danielson, aye. We have the notice of intent for 166 East Ashland Street with a motion to continue. Megan, could you remind me, this has been on the agenda more than once. In fact, I think it's been on the agenda several times since I rejoined the board, which means everyone else because it's a whole new board, back in October. Is that reasonable?
It was originally, so there was originally an ANRAD that was on this past fall.
Yeah.
And so this NOI, yes, has been on probably since January or February of this year, possibly slightly earlier, but after the ANRAD, so they were two separate filings. It has been continued because we are still awaiting the property owner to follow up on the back taxes on the property. And also because this project requires stormwater review, we need that fee deposit from the owner applicant before we can give Beta the go-ahead to begin their stormwater review.
I believe
Because
we
what
should
I'm
get the fee
thinking-
in full. I would get the fee in full for this, not
Yes.
just take the deposit.
Are we, okay, that's a separate item. Let's finish this piece of business and then we can talk about that after. So just in general. So I'm inclined to table this rather than just to continue it.
We've been told, again, that the property owner is going to be in within the week to give us a check and pay the taxes. However,
Well, if we vote to continue this to the next meeting in October and they are asking for another continuance, at that time, I will ask that the board, the commission consider tabling it.
I mean, if you want to vote to table it now, I'm just telling you what we were told that,
Yeah.
but
And commissioners, what that means is that it would be continued indefinitely, not to a date certain, and they would need to re-notify abutters and re-notice in the newspaper. So I'd be just as inclined to do that now, but
I have a question. Is there like a standard amount of time that it's normally dealt with, and have we passed that?
there is no written, there's kind of a rule of thumb, and we are definitely getting close to, this hasn't even been opened then?
it has not been opened.
Yeah, and
No.
Did you?
I don't know if we have, it doesn't look as though we have any members of the public for this meeting.
Yeah,
No,
I'm
the-
wondering if the abutters would need to be at this point re-notified because it's been so long.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we haven't had anyone here for this, but, so what's people's, do you want to vote to table it, or do you just want to vote to continue?
Pam, did you say that they've stated before that they'd be coming in to pay, and then they haven't, and then they stated again that they'd come in to pay and they haven't?
Correct.
Okay, so I feel like we should just table it.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Sure, Joanne here, I'll make the motion to table this item.
Second?
Sparks, I second.
Lucci, I see you there. All in favor?
Cersei, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Zygmunt, aye.
Daniels and I. Then we have plot notice of intent for 383 Quincy Street. They just got in revised information today. And so, of course, no one's had a chance to look at that, and they have asked that we continue to the October meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, Cersei, to continue to the next meeting.
Thank you. Second?
Joanne,
Sparks, I second.
All in favor?
Sparks, aye.
Danielson, aye.
Cersei, aye.
Zygmunt, I think we should go alphabetically.
Be a good idea.
All right, motion passes. And then we have a notice of intent for 53 Baker Street. Is,
Just received an email from
what happened
Azu.
to Megan?
Yeah, where is Megan?
I'm here.
Oh, wait a minute, you are there, never mind, sorry.
Here.
We just received an email from Azu saying in light of the commission, the agent's review and email corresponded to request a continuance to the next regularly scheduled hearing in order to allow sufficient time to address the comments.
Okay, so do I have a motion to continue to October?
Joanne, I'll make a motion to continue to October.
Do I have a second?
Cersei,
Lucia? All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Cersei, aye.
Zygmunt, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Motion passes. And the last hearing of the night, request for amended order of conditions for plot 16 and 23 Hammond Street. And we have, do we need, it looks like, oh, no, we need to make our panelists. I'm assuming Jim Burke and
Greg Driscoll.
Greg Driscoll. Okay, who's going to speak?
I'll speak. How you doing? Greg Driscoll here from Jacobs Driscoll Engineering, representing Hammond Street LLC for the Hammond Gardens Cemetery. So we have requested an amended order of conditions for this project to rearrange the phasing of the project, as stated in the original order of conditions. Special condition D2, the clearing activity should only occur according to the approved phasing sequence. So we're looking to have that the phasing sequence as shown on the plans revised so that they can go ahead and clear the areas they would like to. Am I able to share my screen to show the plan?
You are a panelist. You should be able to share your screen.
Okay. Okay, so this is the proposed phasing. And oops. This was the original phasing, where phase 1 and 2 were the easterly portion of the site, north and south of the old Hammond Street, which has since been abandoned. And this large area up here, in the northwesterly portion of the site, was phase 2. The crematory area was part of phase 1 originally, and then this area down here off of East Street has always been phase 3. So what we're proposing to do is rearrange the phasing so that phase 2 becomes part of phase 1, and the crematory, which we haven't moved forward with the site plan approval yet, would be phase 2. That's going to require a site plan approval as well as state permitting for the crematory. So, and it may be a few years before that gets underway. So that's, and we've also, with this set of plans, we went ahead and, since we applied for the SWIP with EPA, We added in temporary sediment basins into the erosion controls, stockpile areas, concrete washout and dewatering areas, additional rows of erosion controls in sensitive areas. A few modifications we made for the SWIP are now shown on this plan. So that's pretty much what we're asking for, is just to amend the order to revise the phasing. The applicant would like to just bring in the tree company and clear the area, start his grading and work and improvements on the road and access throughout the area.
Okay, Megan, do you want to go over your comments?
Sure. So I went out to the site just to do an update on the existing site conditions and check the wetland flags, because it has been over 3 years since this was originally permitted. So generally, my comments, for the most part, I was able to identify most of the flags and they appear to be generally accurate. The only comments I had were in regards to wetland A, so the northernmost wetland. I noticed, or I was unable to locate wetland flag A56, which, if you notice, it's on the right side of the wetland and it's also the one that projects farthest out. And so because I was unable to locate that flag, there was a concern about how that would affect the limit of work as it appears to be currently staked. And similarly, based on where the abutting flags or the adjacent flags, so around 54 to 51, appeared to be possibly, to my eyes, a few feet off based on the topography of the site. And so that, and my only other comments were on the wetland system C. So that's the easternmost, that is a wet meadow that transitions to a scrub swamp. So those flags are currently mounted on stakes.
Greg, can you scroll down to that?
Yep.
Yes, so it's sort of, yeah, right. Yes, so those ones, they are flags mounted on stakes because, again, it starts off as more of a wet meadow BVW. I was able to locate almost all of them, but in the area, particularly around the easement, some of them I was not able to locate. So taking all that together, I would just recommend that any amendment include a special condition, a new pre-construction special condition stated that as part of the pre-construction process, we do another inspection of the limit of work. So it looks like the limit of work has already started or has already been staked out. So I would recommend that we check that again before the pre-construction go ahead to do any clearing. So that's my comments in terms of the wetland areas and the limits of work. In terms of the proposed amendments, in general, I would say that the overall scope and extent of the project has not changed. So I think considering as an amendment is the appropriate way of going forward. And overall, my view of it is that by moving the area of phase 2 in the north to phase 1 is adding a substantial amount of concurrent clearing with the existing phase 1. However, I have noted that only a small proportion of that clearing is within the 100-foot buffer zone to that wetland A. So this is something to consider because it is a substantial amount of concurrent clearing, but it is mostly upland. And then my second comment related to the proposal of moving, there's currently a condition, special condition D4, that states that the access road to phase 3 should be constructed as part of phase 1 in order to prevent inundation to the wetland series B, which is the one just to the north of it. I believe the amendment request is asking to move that access road out of phase 1. At this time, based on my review of the previous reports and the reasoning for that access road, at this point, I don't think there's been a sufficient rebuttal of the need for that access road. And so at this time, I wouldn't recommend removing that special condition until such information is provided to show that it's no longer needed. And then in terms of if an amended order is to be granted, the amendments that would need to be made is that we would add this plan that we're looking at now as the plan of record. Again, I would recommend adding the additional pre-construction check of the limits of work that I suggested. And finally, again, I'm suggesting that special condition D4 should remain in the amended order unless the commission's provided with sufficient evidence that the concerns for that phasing no longer apply.
Okay, thank you. I was on the board when this project was approved. I walked the site with Mr. Driscoll and Mr. King, as well as other members of the commission and people from Nova Armstrong. The reason for the phasing, and the order of conditions states that each phase must be completed before another phase is done. And in my recollection of what we were seeking was that a phase be completed and that the plots be filled before another section was cleared and prepared for burials. So it sounds like, for convenience, the developer who agreed with this wants to go in and clear cut everything. When we walked the site, we also talked about not clearing every tree, you know, to work within the topography and the landscape, in the landscape. That wasn't necessarily part of the order of conditions, but the order of conditions does talk about retaining trees and every care being taken to protect and keep trees that are located within the 100-foot buffer zone. I want to say that the reason for continuing Hammond Street, and I may have this wrong, it may have been a convenience for operations of the cemetery. I know there was some concern from abutters about the potential traffic impact. And it may, one of the commissioners may have raised that as well, onto the adjoining streets. So maybe Mr. Driscoll will recall that and can talk to it.
Yeah, as far as the concerns about the traffic implications, this was never meant to cut all the way through. Let's see where, we ended the street, the pavement of the street right here,
Yeah.
and there are gates that are proposed to keep that from happening. So that's one of the things that we went through back when we first permitted it. And we also came to agreements with Mr. Lovell and the Sisters of Jesus Crucified to relocate the entranceway around Mr. Lovell's property instead of going straight out through the previous Hammond Street section here. This has been since discontinued through a process with the selectmen or the city council. So yeah, there was quite a bit of back and forth with the abutters and appeasing everything that they would like, and we did land swaps and everything to make all this happen. And as far as the traffic goes, this won't be a throughway. There's no direct connection out to East Street.
Okay, So Mr. Lovell feels it's more advantageous to have that roadway run along the back of his property with
Yeah, I
a
believe he's since passed,
roundabout?
but his brother lived in this property here too. They didn't want to have a road in between their properties. So these two were related at the time.
Because that, I just don't see where that's advantageous.
Yeah, they didn't want a road cut in between their two properties, and they're related. They also, I think
And
there's
this
other
is the
houses.
amended, this is the amended plan. Is that,
Yeah, this all was in the original.
it was, okay.
Yeah, this was from 2016, I believe, when we did all this.
Okay. And any response to my comments about why the phase? I mean, I'm not inclined to vote to amend the phasing for the reason that I stated in the original intent.
Well, we could get creative here and introduce another portion of the phasing of the work and cut out the area that's within the 100 feet of this wetland over here, if that's the concern, and work just in the upland areas.
Well, no, the concern was that the purpose of the phasing was to have an area cleared and or prepared for use for burials, and then to use that area and then move on to the next area and the next area.
Yeah, Doug's not here tonight. I was gonna ask him. I just know that they would like to move forward with the majority of the project at this time. Jim, do you have any input on?
I guess I'm having some difficulty hearing, but in terms of the phasing, Madam Chairman, I think the bottom line is it just was, from a construction perspective, impractical to go ahead in and utilize the prior phasing plan, because they seem to be inconsistent in how they were going to approach the development of the property. Essentially, where the phase is now, you've got most of your construction that's going on the northerly portion of the property in terms of opening it up for a cemetery use. It's not going to be, quote, clear cut and left clear cut. The development will proceed on a very timely basis in terms of creating a project that they can develop. It's an engineering perspective that I know Mr. Driscoll can identify, but I recall sitting down with the developer, and he just, when he looked at the specifics and the timing, found it was absolutely impractical to proceed. Now, obviously, your vote controls and how it goes forward, but it's his intention to move forward with the cemetery in a timely way, to do it and leave the property not as an open landscape, but to move the property along in a timely way so that it's going to be attractive for the individuals who seek to utilize it and their families, or the families of those that seek to utilize it. So I think it's a discretion, but hopefully the board will consider the concern of the developer. Maybe there was a mistake made in terms of the site walk when you were going and his understanding, but he just believes it's from a construction perspective totally impractical to utilize the old phasing.
Comments from the commissioners?
Joanne here. So I'm a little bit confused about what's happening on this site. So does Hammond Street at the moment exist, and you can actually drive from east to west on it?
No. there is a portion of the road along here where you'll see, it's essentially a paper street, but there is this roadway right here that the sisters had built to access their cemetery
Okay,
right here. So you see how it ends right there.
gotcha.
But otherwise, it's a paper street that,
Okay. So when you were explaining earlier why the road with the roundabout went off to the north, that bit of Hammond Street doesn't exist. So the two lots are literally one right next to each other.
I know it's discontinued. I'm not sure if they annexed those into their properties or not yet.
Ah, okay. Gotcha. And could you just once again kind of clarify this phasing? So I think what I'm hearing is that from a construction point of view, it makes sense to do everything together instead of the way that it had been proposed to be phased before. But in terms of use of this cemetery, so which part is going to be used for burials to begin with? Is that the part near the roundabout? That kind of northeastern part?
Not really sure. I don't know if they're gonna go from one end to the other, or if they'll just have lots and let families and choose anywhere within there.
From anywhere?
I'm not sure. I know this area here is designated for veterans.
Mhm.
And that's something I wanted to get going.
Okay. And
Yeah.
Stephanie, was kind of the intention before to delay clearing
Yes,
actually needed?
right.
So my second question was going to be, well, how long is it going to take if the northeastern part of the cemetery is going to be filled first? How long would it take to move into that northwestern side? But I don't think you can answer that. But that's kind of information that I think would help me make a decision on this project. Because if it is the case that they're going to start offering lots only in the northeastern section of the cemetery, and it takes, I don't know, 3 years to fill those lots before moving into the northwestern section, then my feeling would be to not clear cut that section for as long as possible until it's absolutely, necessary. So that's kind of my comment and where I kind of am sitting right now. My only other question is, I guess, and this was sort of approved before, so I don't mean to reopen the conversation, but I'm curious. So the roundabout comes very close to the 25-foot buffer line. And I would have liked to have seen it moved further away. But it is what it is. So I'm just mentioning that.
Well, if I can offer a suggestion, Madam Chairman, you've asked some questions about the beyond the phasing, but actually the developmental operation of the facility. We could return back to the commission at your next meeting and give some input from the developer, which may answer some of the questions that are raised by members of the commission.
I think that would be helpful. Also, you wouldn't necessarily show a plan with each of the individual plots, but I think it would also be helpful to understand, especially in some of these areas, how many burial plots can be accommodated by the areas in each of the phases. Because I think
We
that
can
will
try to get you as much
Sure.
detailed information as possible.
that would be appreciated.
And
All right.
Stephanie, just one more thing. So I'm curious about what you mentioned about not entirely clear cutting the site, but retaining some of the trees and shrub layers in appropriate places. I know that our influence is only within the 100-foot buffer line, and obviously we'd like to keep as many trees in that area as possible, but is that addressed somewhere in this project as to what actually is it literally clear cut, raised to the ground throughout, all of these sections of the phasing, or is the intention to actually landscape with some of the existing trees?
The conversation during the site walk with the developer was, and I'm just looking at the plan because it doesn't, the plan doesn't show
No, so I'm
changes
looking
in
at,
grading. It shows the existing grades, but again, so I think that's a question for Greg. And my understanding was, because even though the grade changes, I recall it being kind of gently sloping. It wasn't these jutting grades that wouldn't lend themselves well to cemetery use without significant grading on the site to make it usable. So according to Mr. King, the intent was to try to work with the topography and save some of the trees. There were some larger trees out there. I think there were trees that lined, again, it's been, gosh, 4 or 5 years. Greg, when was this permitted? That's another good question. Is this permit still valid?
It was permanent in 2016. We have an extension.
So you did seek an extension?
Yeah, we have extension until this January.
Okay.
So that was another question I had. If the work is underway by January 8th, when this expires, are we still good to continue, or do we need another extension until?
Oh, no, you need an extension.
So
And you
keep
need
extending until we finish.
Right, and you need your extension submitted to the commission at least 30 days before the expiration.
Okay.
Once it expires, the number of days before its expiration date is less than the 30 days. And once it expires, you can't request an extension. It's a new filing. So you want to make sure your client is on top of that, which they usually are very on top of that.
I can even have
I keep wanting to move this. Can you scroll this back down so we can see more of the area?
I can have a letter for the extension submitted between now and the next meeting, if that's helpful.
So Joanne, to answer your question, it was to try to preserve, so, and in part too, because so many cemeteries really are just flat areas with minimal vegetation, minimal woody vegetation, and yet some of the more restive and pastoral cemeteries incorporate, have trees that are incorporated along the pathways and provide an area that people can go and really appreciate the environment while they might be considering their loved one who is no longer with them.
this is Sparks here. I'd very much like to echo that. As personally, as a landscape designer, this is a thing that I do. I think following what Joanne said, if we can have a better idea of the layout of the land, we can make much better decisions to everyone's benefit here. So once again, it does go beyond our scope of the wetlands, but I feel compelled to help make this a better, more successful project that also helps the land be better as well. I think we can all benefit here with just a little bit more information in an organized way. If that request makes sense, like knowing where the plots should be and where our major vegetation is on the property, I think overall will make for better design decisions, if everyone agrees with that, for moving forward, like what we're asking for here.
That makes sense to me. So, and I think, Mr. Burke, you said you're going to talk to your client and get more information around that.
We certainly will. We certainly will. And I understand the comments from the board, commission, excuse me. And clearly the bulk of the site is outside of the jurisdiction. I understand that too, but we want to try to make this the best project we can for the community and for the developer. So we'll try to get you the information, and if we can get it continued to the next hearing, maybe we'll have a productive discussion at that time.
Sounds good. Do I have a motion to continue to October?
Joanne here, I'll make a motion to continue to October.
Do I have a second?
Darcy, second.
All in favor?
Zygmunt, aye.
Cersei,
Danielson, aye.
Cersei, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Motion passes, and we'll see you next month.
Okay, do you have a date for the next
Very
meeting?
much for your time.
Pam, what's the date? 21st. Did you
21st.
say the 21st? No, it can't be the 21st. Is it?
It is the 21st, October.
Okay. October 21st.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Very
You
good.
too.
Thank you.
And yeah, Greg, do you want to stop sharing your screen? Thank you. All right, let's see. We have under other business. Do you want to do the minutes? And
Well-
Pam, I know I said that I wanted time to go back and review the minutes from July. I haven't had a chance to do any of that. But I did review last month's minutes.
I saw. Well, we've got June 17th, June 24th, July and August. So is this something you want to approve as they are?
Well, I don't know if I looked at the 2 June.
I think
Minutes.
you did.
If I looked at them, I think those are probably fine. It was the July minutes that there was just one section in there. And again, it was going to be easier for me to try to edit it myself than.
Well, I think you have editing permission now on them.
Yeah, I didn't for the minutes from the 26th.
I gave you editing. I gave everybody editing permission, so I'm surprised.
Because
What
I
I-
tried, maybe I don't know how to use Google Docs, but I tried, because the 26 had a couple of typos, but it wasn't even worth putting in an email. They were minor and anyone reading them could figure out what it was. It didn't obscure the. So I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from August 26th.
Joanne, I'll second that.
All in favor? Oh, yeah, you've seconded. Lucia?
Cersei, aye.
Zygmunt, aye.
Danielson, aye? Okay.
All right, so you want to leave the rest of them?
Again, I'm fine if the other commissioners are fine with the June minutes.
Yep, I reviewed them.
Okay, do you want to make a motion?
Sure, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from June 17 and June 24.
Second?
Cersei, I'll second that.
All in favor? Danielson, aye?
Zygmunt, aye.
Sparks, aye.
Cersei,
Okay.
aye.
All right. So Megan and I attended, what did we go to?
The open meeting law training?
Open meeting law. So interestingly enough, if we put up a transcript, minutes, or the recording, that's sufficient. So you don't need everything. So if we post the transcript of the meeting,
Yep,
technically we don't need minutes of the meeting.
yeah. Oh, why don't we do that for the July minute meeting?
they're posted.
Yeah,
So
the draft, right.
The
So-
recordings are posted within a couple of days.
Yeah, so, all right. Yeah, I kind of knew that to be the case, but
But people look for the minutes.
it's, yes,
That's why when I type them, I say a full recording is,
available,
it says, yeah, recording is available so that they know to go look for the recording.
right. Okay.
Oh, it's Megan's time.
Enforcement correspondence, 19 Wallace Street, Megan. We can't hear you. I mean, we could kind of hear you. Are you two in the same office?
Yes. Okay, yes, so this, I received email from Counselor Nicastro that she had heard of some tree cutting and earth moving with a bobcat occurring at 19 Wallace Street. So I took a look at the site to confirm that there was a bobcat out there, and it looks like some dirt or fill has been pushed around. So I reviewed our files to see that this house did have an order of conditions from when it was built, and it did have a limit of work at the 25-foot buffer zone. So I issued a letter to the property owner informing him of conservation jurisdiction and requesting that he attend this meeting. He did give a call to our office, and I spoke to him. He said that he was unable to attend this meeting tonight, so he asked what he needed to do to come into compliance. So at the time, I advised him to stop all work on the site, and I sent him a copy of the approved plan of record from when the house was built with the order of conditions. And so he stated that he was not aware of that order of conditions or that limit of work. So I advised him to begin the process of working with a surveyor and a wetland scientist to reflag those wetlands and to prepare a permit application for any work that he's planning back there. He said he'd been putting in a patio. So I told him to work with the surveyor and the wetland scientist to prepare the permit for any of that work, and then possibly any mitigation that might be needed if he's crossed into the 25-foot buffer zone. So as of tonight, that is the correspondence I've had with him in terms of advising him to pursue the proper permits and the proper mitigation that may be needed for the work.
Megan, is that a fairly new constructed house?
I believe, let me have it here. I can say it is fairly new. Is it?
Yeah, like within the last 10 years.
Yes, within the last 10 years. Here it is. It was originally, so it was a subdivision from 25 Wallace Street. So yes, last 15 years, I would say. This looks like it was from 2005 was the order of conditions.
Okay. Jeez. And I'm looking at Google Maps. And if this is showing 19 Wallace Street in the correct location, is this set back off the road?
Yes, it's a retreat lot.
So it looks like there are 3 or 4 piles of sand out back.
Yes, there is some sort of fill.
And I'm sorry, you said, is that in the buffer zone? You said he said he was building a patio? And there also looks like there might be encroachment. Is that the area that was, this is kind of interesting.
Yes,
there
it
doesn't
looks
look
like
like the
there could
backyard.
be encroachment. The wetlands are in sort of the north east corner.
Right.
So I think where the piles of fill are probably towards the edge of the buffer zone, but it
And
does
what's
look
that
like,
other area that's cleared and kind of reddish brown looking?
yes, it does look like, again, just looking at the aerials and looking at the as-built, it did look like there could have been encroachment past the limit of work, which is why
Yeah,
a permit's going to be needed both for the patio. There does look like there is a small patio off the house. So
Okay.
a permit would be needed for the patio, and again, there could be a need for mitigation based on where I expect the 25-foot is. It's probably right off the back of the existing lawn.
yeah. Was this supposed to have permanent markers?
I believe this is a case where the order of conditions, the markers say, this is one of the older, it looks like, yeah, so there was a time, in the early 2000s where they weren't asking for limit of work markers, but they might have asked for wetland markers.
Yep.
And they did receive their certificate of compliance. But I'm trying to see if there's any report in here that confirms if there are any markers. The as-built plan does not show markers, which is why I'm trying to see if there's any language.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it does, the order of conditions says that there would be permanent markers demarcating the wetland boundary.
Mhm.
But I don't have confirmation besides the fact that they have their certificate of compliance,
Yeah,
but that doesn't guarantee
right.
that there aren't markers at where I would expect the limit of work to have been.
Yeah. Okay. Any of the other commissioners have any comments?
No.
Okay, do we have any other business? Not reasonably anticipated by the chair? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Joanne, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Cersei, second.
All in favor? Danielson, aye.
Cersei, aye.
Aye.
All right, it was great seeing everybody tonight. Thank you all for being here. And have a good night and have a good month.
Have a good night, guys. Bye.
Bye.